First off, a huge thank you to everyone who's travelled from all over the state to come here. This is a really important, momentous occasion, and we've got some important MP guests. But I wanted to start by acknowledging that we are on Gadigal land, that this is an area that once was the Tank Stream Valley. We don't know what the Indigenous name for that stream was, but it's an area that would have been a thriving environment where Indigenous communities were able to hunt and fish and live in a pretty incredible natural environment that has, and one of the things that we at the Invasive Species Council always do in our acknowledgement of country is also acknowledge that these areas have changed. They have been replaced from that natural environment to one that is increasingly filled with invasive species, and that is a direct impact on Indigenous culture and Indigenous connection to the landscapes. So we've achieved an incredible amount of work getting over 11,000 signatures on this petition, and my name's Jack Goff. I'm the interim chief executive of the Invasive Species Council. We have supported this process, auspiced this process, but this has been a community-run process, and I really want to acknowledge that first up. This is something that Linda Groom and Peter, where's Peter Conroy? Walking up the stairs, have led. Over 75 volunteers have participated in over 50 locations to get those signatures. It's not something that Invasive Species Council staff have participated in. It's absolutely been a community-driven initiative that we have just made sure you've got our insurance for those events, and funding for collateral and things like that. But that is incredible. It takes a lot to get over 10,000 signatures on a petition. It is not a small thing. There's a reason that the Parliament has debates if you can get above that number. It is much bigger than having people just click or sign their name online, because it involves people having to go out into the community and actually get people, a whole vast array of people to put their name to something. Linda's going to come and talk a little bit about that process, and also Linda, on behalf of all of us, will be handing it over to the MPs that we have here. So just acknowledging Dr. Joe McGurr, who's the member for Wagga, who's been an incredible champion, was an incredible champion during the previous election on this issue. The Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment, Trish Doyle, who also has been a champion. The last time there was a petition on this issue was the person who introduced that one to Parliament, and I know a lot of people from the Blue Mountains have been very passionately engaged in this, and also James Griffin, the former Environment Minister and the current Shadow Environment Minister, again a champion, and someone who made sure, along with Matt Keane, that when Labor came into government, that they were in a position to start that work of actually reducing the numbers. If we didn't have the championing from James and from Matt, the great work that we've seen, with Penny Sharp and with the National Parks and Wildlife Service starting to get those numbers down and get them down fast would not have been possible. And that's something I think is really important, and I'm glad we're clapping James, because sometimes it feels like whoever's there at the end is the only people who've been involved, but this has been a long process, and we have champions in all parties, and that's really important. Liberals, Labor, Greens, Independents across the spectrum have been our champions. They've made sure their doors are open when we need them to be. They have spoken in Parliament. They've come out to the park and seen the impact of feral horses. So that is very important. It is important for the next step, which we hope will be the repeal of John Barilaro's horrendous law, which continues to protect a feral animal in a national park at the expense of our native animals. So to introduce the petition, to tell you the wording of the petition and the process that's gone through, Linda Groom, who is the volunteer coordinator for the Invasive Species Council. She organised the walk from Parliament to the top of Kosciuszko. She has been a powerhouse in making sure all of you are coordinated and engaged on this issue. I would say Linda, at least puts 30 plus hours of work into this work every week. She is a full-time and also a very passionate bushwalker and someone who has also been key in documenting the impacts of the feral horses. So thank you, Linda, and I'll hand over to you to hand over the petition and explain the process.
Thank you, Jack. So back in 2018, I was a bushwalker who often visited Kosciuszko National Park and saw the effects of the feral horses in the park. And then in June that year, I was quite shocked when the Kosciuszko Wild Horse Heritage Act was passed. It seemed to me that it was unfair to native animals because it prioritised feral horses out of all the feral animals in the park for a special kind of protection. So I organised a walk of 560 kilometres, a protest walk from Sydney to the summit of Kosciuszko. And this now, I think, is a kind of end of the beginning of that long journey. It looks as though it's come full circle because that walk started at Parliament House and now we are here today with 11,000 signatures at Parliament House. I think it's a kind of hopeful end now. One of the reasons I'm hopeful is that when I've been walking in the National Park this year, after the aerial shooting in the removal and prevention zones, I've been noticing signs of recovery. So I've seen roll holes with the grass coming back in, and I've seen native grasses getting the opportunity to grow to a height where they can show their seed, which will give food for all Kosciuszko's little critters right through the winter. But it's not a full recovery yet. There's still quite a bit of work to do. And that's because of the Kosciuszko Wild Horse Heritage Act and its requirement for a population of horses to remain in the park. In a nutshell, the way to implement that requirement is to set a target number, and the current target number is 3,000. And once you have a target that is a number, to track progress, you have to do counts, surveys. Counting any kind of feral animal, like horses, is slow. It's expensive because you have to usually use helicopters. It needs a seriously expert statistician to analyse the results, and it involves a methodology which, although it is robust, is quite hard to explain to the general public. So it's inefficient as well as unfair to the native animals and to the natural environment. I think governments know that stop-start management of feral animals is inefficient, but governments have been forced into that by the existence of the Kosciuszko Wild Horse Heritage Act. I have a lot of sympathy for present and past and possibly future ministers for the environment who have to administer this act. It would be so much simpler to manage it under the good old National Parks and Wildlife Act of 1975. It's been around for decades. It has provisions to manage feral animals. It has provisions to recognise heritage in national parks. It's been administered by all kinds of flavours of governments and all sorts of personalities of ministers, and it has survived. We don't need another act that contradicts that. So I hope this petition, which is laid out here for you to look at by date, but you can see all the range of places where we've collected. I hope this petition leads on to that hopeful end, and I'd like now to hand it out of my hands into the careful hands of these members of Parliament.
And just before we do the handover, I just also wanted to acknowledge Sue Higginson from the Greens, who's the environment lead for the Greens as well. So,
and sorry I was late. I was in the chamber.
All sides left.
Oh, well done, all of you.
James the Manly one? The Blue Mountains one? We've got them. We've got them. Do you want a picture? Oh, no, it's not Blue Mountains. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Jack. And I'll just say a few words. Joe McGirr's my name, member for Wagga. I'd just like to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal land. People of the Eora Nation, pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Also acknowledge the lands from which I come, the Wiradjuri people and their elders and their traditions. It's great to be here, can I just say, and can I begin by thanking all of you in this room today for the efforts that you've made. I do want to acknowledge Jack and Linda for your leadership. Thank you very much. I do also want to acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, James Griffin, the Shadow Environment Minister, Trish Doyle, the Parliamentary Secretary, and Sue Higginson, Environment Spokesman for the Greens in the Upper House. And it's wonderful actually to have such a broad spectrum of members of Parliament represented here today. Linda, congratulations to you and your team. This is hard yakka. This is a tough issue. It's a tough issue because the facts on this issue have been so muddied, have been so blurred. I understand the passion of people for the horses. I understand that, but the level of misinformation and abuse that goes with the discussion on this makes this a really tough ask. And having seen you guys at the Wagga Marketplace, 267 signatures at the Wagga Marketplace, basically on a Saturday. That's great, and it shows a level of support. But I know almost all of those would have needed a conversation, because in my part of the world, this is an issue where, well, don't we love horses? You know, what's going on? And to get 11,000 signatures in that environment, which I think took probably a calm conversation with many people, where you have to take them through the issues, that has been a labour of love and dedication. So thank you very much for that. This is an important step. I want to congratulate the government, and I also want to congratulate, as Jack has said, the support he's received, the government's received from James and the Liberal Party, and from the Greens on this, that's allowed the culling to take place in the park. No one wants to celebrate that culling. We acknowledge the pain that that's caused, but the fact of the matter is that this bill and the debate before it and the delays and the prevarication and the misinformation had allowed those numbers to grow in the park to extraordinary levels. I figure that, and there's still debate about the numbers in terms of the misinformation. So there's no doubt in my mind that this bill was a significant part of allowing that to happen, and if we don't act to repeal that, then we risk going backwards again. And we must not go backwards on this issue. It's too important for our natural heritage. The Kosciuszko National Park should be the jewel in the crown of this state and of our country, and we don't want it trashed, and we need to get feral animals under control, and that includes feral horses. So my sincere thanks to you all for this. We'll table this, of course. It will bring on a debate, and I hope that will then start a process that will take us forward to repealing the bill. So I might leave it at that, but I think my colleagues would probably like to say a few brief words. Jack, if that's okay?
Yeah, definitely.
So I might ask Trish Doyle to speak first.
Hello everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your individual and collective work on this important campaign. I remember being quite taken aback watching the documentary Where the Water Starts, and having conversations with activists who were walking and talking with people and collecting signatures in the early days. But sometimes it's the visual and allowing that to absorb And then having conversations with colleagues across the political spectrum who feel the same way and are compelled to bring about change. But that wouldn't happen without you. So I just briefly, I think Joe's covered off most of the points that we all probably want to make. I just want to acknowledge the Invasive Species Council and the incredible support that you have provided and that very clear and concise advice to members of Parliament and working with communities. This is where the good work happens, actually, is when people across the political spectrum from different political parties or independent actually come together and work with the community on a reform that needs to happen. This stuff, and I notice there aren't cameras around here, and as Jack said, they're elsewhere, but this is the kind of good work led by community that you don't often see on the news, or especially in mainstream media, and that's unfortunate, but it doesn't diminish the work that you've done and the care and compassion and the drive that you bring to raising this issue. And just before I hand over to Sue or to James, of course it's important for me to acknowledge the fabulous people from the Blue Mountains who have been working on issues like this, especially the Blue Mountains Conservation Society, for many, many years, and who I listen to as a source of not just information but expertise. Back in the day when I worked for the Honourable Bob Debus, former Minister for the Environment, former Minister for everything in this place actually, he was my mentor, and one of the first things he said to me was, there are some conservation groups and environmental groups that you will work with, and they are the experts. They are the experts. Take their advice and take that into the Parliament. So thank you to you all from the various areas. In my capacity as the Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment and Climate Change, Heritage and Energy, but particularly the first three, I've been tasked by the Minister to undertake a review of the wildlife care and rehabilitation sector strategy. So I'm hearing from different people around the state too about the need to protect our wildlife. So I feel that I will use that opportunity as well to further the cause that you are seeking from us to address in this place through legislation and reform. Thank you all. I'll hand over now to Sue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, all of you, for coming here today. I too acknowledge we're on the land of the Gadigal and pay respects. And while I do that, I also really want to acknowledge the incredible work of Richard Swain. And I know all of you are incredibly familiar with every single moment, second, hour, night of advocacy Richard has put in at massive personal cost, particularly on this issue and the country he loves and knows so well that we call Kosci. Folks, we know it's been absolutely absurd what we have had to endure and put up with since the introduction of the wild horses legislation here in New South Wales. Never did most of us in our wildest nightmares imagine that we would have legislation that protects an invasive species in one of our most important, revered and treasured and rare ecosystems in this country. The alpine region of the Kosci is just so unique. We know that it's also now at one of its absolute marginal edges that we now have entered this period of climate change that is upon us. So the fact that all of you have stayed the course and stayed true to the ultimate goal, which is not just to protect these incredible environments, it's to build their resilience, to recover the harm that has been done over many, many years, and to increase and build upon our protected area network. The fact that you have stayed the course and fought back against some of the absurdities that we've seen that have come through this place is an absolute measure of the love and the strength and the evidence base that you all work upon. It is what fills my step every day to keep me here in this place and fighting not just to protect the protected area network we have, but to build it bigger and better. Right now, you know, we've got the goal of increasing New South Wales's protected area network to at least 30% of the state by 2030. And the work here today, making sure that we can protect Kosci, get the horses out once and for all, because they just shouldn't be there. We know that. This is part of that incredible work. So seriously, from the bottom of my heart to the top of my head to the lawyer in my fingertips that is working with evidence every day, thank you to each and every one of you for doing this incredible work. I know what it means standing on those stalls and getting those signatures. I know what it means getting up every day to make those dates and those deadlines and do this work. And you folk have done it. And I just can't tell you how grateful I am. It makes my work here so much more worth being here every day. So thank you to all of you.
Thanks a lot, Jack, for bringing us all together, and Dr. Joe for taking carriage of this very well-earned and hard-fought petition. I'm very happy to speak to you today as the member for Manly and just a former washed-up old Environment Minister. So, but no, can I just say two things? I just want to reflect on the importance of the work that you have done. One thing will never leave me, and that is the unfortunate violence that was directed at our national park staff in this region as they simply went about their work. They are, and I think we'll all share this view, the best agency in the New South Wales government. The work they do, they're a fantastic outfit, and for them to have experienced that in just trying to set out and implement a fact-based, science-driven approach to caring for our beautiful national park was appalling. But I think all that did was propel the likes of yourselves to work harder and more diligently to go out there and get these tens of thousands of signatures. The last point I want to make very briefly is to congratulate Jack and to share with you, I think, the importance and the value of having a professional, respectful and smart advocacy group like the Invasive Species Council and the work that they do to ensure that members of Parliament of all colours and stripes are armed with the data and the science and have someone helping lead and push a discussion that is very important. When you lose government, you find very quickly who your friends are and who the smart people are, and the fact that Jack kept banging on the door to talk to the opposition to ensure that we're a part and continue to be a part of this discussion, I think speaks volumes about the work that he does and the importance of the Invasive Species Council. But if it weren't for all of you out there getting these signatures, we wouldn't be here today, so I congratulate you on that. I think the others have articulated incredibly well the next steps, and let's keep going. So thank you and well done.
Steve, sorry. Steve, I'm Steve Bond, member for Monero, among other things. And sorry, I had another appointment at 10 with HIA talking about housing, which is my skills portfolio side of it. So yeah, good to see you all here today. And I've been obviously since I was member for Monero, re-elected as member for Monero in 2023, very strongly supporting things like the reintroduction of aerial culling, and it's something that I've spoken to a number of you in the room about at various times. The park has really serious threats, not just from the horses, but also as a local I've observed the massive growth in deer population and pigs. We've got a lot of work to keep on top of those, and obviously the aerial culling of deer and pigs particularly needs to continue. So not just in Kosciuszko Park, frankly, but in quite a lot of our land around our region. So I'm also have been a lover of Kosciuszko I've been walking, riding in Kosci for decades, and it's obviously an incredibly important part of our region. So Joe and I share Kosci as the local members for the area. And it is something which is very special. It was, you all will be very well aware, Kosciuszko National Park was created essentially because it was being, to protect it from hard-hoofed animals which were grazing the park, and one of the reasons it was created was actually to start moving them out of the park to protect the water supplies for the people to the west, and it's something which is, still needs to be protected. So I think the news that we had from the Minister recently around the success of the aerial culling is something which is pretty amazing. It's been pretty rapid progress and very pleased to see that. Obviously I cop a bit of flack both ways on this at times, and I'll get some nasty emails for appearing with you guys today, but so be it. It's the way it goes. People will come and see me to tell me about the horses, but it is really important that we protect the things which we made Kosciuszko Park for, and that's the native flora and fauna, which are very special and very unique and need to be protected. I've had a bit of a long history of working with the Invasive Species Council. Some of you might know, before I came back into Parliament, I was with the Irrigators Council, and you might be surprised to know that our interests coincided quite frequently with the Invasive Species Council, because introduced species across New South Wales do incredible damage to our waterways and our riparian zones right across the state, and it's a huge task that we've got to try and do more to address those issues. It's one that will be an ongoing challenge for us for generations to come. So thanks for all being a part of this. Thanks, David.
I think it's probably all been said.
Yeah. So thank you so much to MPs and obviously Steve Wan has just come, and also Jeremy Buckingham from the Legalised Cannabis Party. So we have a broad array of support. Thank you everyone who has participated. As I said, over 50 locations, more than 75 volunteers being involved in getting over 11,000 signatures. We very deliberately made sure that we spread those locations across the state, so that there it shows you that broad array. Next step will be the petition being introduced by Dr. Joe McGurr into Parliament. We'll make sure we fill the gallery for that, because the public support for this is essential on this issue. As Steve and Juan and Dr. McGurr both alluded to, there are some opposition to this, and we need politicians of courage, which I think we have here, and politicians of courage need communities of support, which we have here. So that is really important. Keep it up. Thank you so much.